I like to. Oh shit! Sorry, I'm still sick. Okay, guys. I can't believe I started out the video like that. um, in light of or whatever, talking about how I'm my own favorite artist recently, I would like to also talk about the importance of self acceptance. You know, and as an artist, I had not been my most favoritist artist ever until like last year, and I'm 30 years old, and I've been making art since I was 5. I've always looked down on myself, and in my first year where I call myself my favorite artist, I'm accused of being a narcissist. Go figure, from like some random internet stranger that acts like they know everything about psychology all of a sudden. Not that it's really about that, but I do get it, Like I get the first impression of, oh, this guy really likes their art, at least consumes their art a lot. They're full of themselves. They therefore they refuse to listen to anyone else. Therefore they have a closed mind. Therefore they are self-righteous and they don't deserve that evaluation where they're placing their own art ahead of other people's art in their own lives or artistic processes. And just also in the nature of laying it down such as that, I feel like it should kind of speak for itself too. It's like I have not been a fan of my art for the longest time until I realized how good it was, and I didn't decide how good it was. I just made the art, and then it just ended up being really good, and a lot of people agree. And a lot of people probably disagree, but I just don't hear from them. You know what I'm saying? But not saying like the amount of numbers of people who enjoy art equals the value of art, right? Because that's also a different thing. We can also say that art is subjective. There's a whole spectrum of value, and people will be able to take things from certain arts that other people won't be able to see any value from. Whether it's like some bigoted piece or some like saintly piece. There's different worldviews in the world, and there's a lot of different ways to express one's worldview. And what better way to express your worldview than to do it through the means of artistic endeavors? So that's like a whole different spiel. I started out this video wanting to talk about something that we should all agree on is the notion of self-acceptance and the notion of self-love and the notion of self-monitoring and the notion of wanting to be the best version of yourself that you can be. So, what more can you ask for an individual, let alone an artist or whatever, an artist, let alone an individual? What more could you ask from that person than to enjoy the process of creating and being enthralled and excited about their work? What more can you ask about, or what more can you ask from a person to enjoy what they're doing, to enjoy their existence, to appreciate who they are in the moment, who they've been, who they're going to be? Those are not criteria for narcissism. So I don't know. I just got thinking because Muggs Mugsley said, "You nailed it. I feel the same way." Aziz Ansari, who doesn't he expose himself to his peers, by the way? He does a bit about finding out Kanye West listens to his own music and how he found that to be super odd, but I always thought that to be super normal. Literally, it's like, how are you going to improve if you're all practice, practice, practice? People who are practicing, executing without evaluating their prior works or performances are doomed to some sort of like stagnation if they're not able to get ahead of whatever they want from their intentions when creating art. If you're just creating art without reflecting, in other words, on your experience, which art usually is a reflection of your inner worldviews, like I had just built up before in this talk. Um, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, ideally, the artist understands they have artistic value, and I don't want to, as a person in general, I don't want to see people who are defeated just by their mere existence. I don't want to see people who are in self denial, in other words. I don't want to see an artist who is suffering so I can feel better about myself. Sure, I'm happy to see an artist who is suffering just because they're a human and they're reflecting on their experiences, but I do that as a form of grounding in my empathy and in my own worldview where I feel like I'm suffering too. I don't enjoy looking at other people who are worse off than me to feel better about myself. And I feel like that's one of the only ways one can take that approach to this person is narcissistic if they're not suffering or in self denial in their art. If they're glorifying themselves, and like, dude, look at my freaking portfolio. I've been making art for over 20 years. I am not a beginner. I'm advanced at this shit. So I literally have earned my right through the means of suffering, effort, time, and endless reflection to evaluate myself to be the best that I've ever been. Like, you know what I mean? And like to truly create my own art, in my opinion, I feel like in order to represent my authentic voice, I've done all the work of collecting the dots from the world in the sense of getting my inspirations. And I'm happy to be inspired. I'm still open minded, you know. I'm happy to be inspired by new ideas and new approaches to things. But I'm 30 years old and I've been doing this my whole life. I feel like I would be robbing my own integrity, my own authenticity, if I rooted my inspiration anywhere other than my own self and my own wants and my own reflections and my own asks of my personal standards of how I want to perform or execute an idea. You know, I can talk about this forever. This is 7 minutes, but you know, I got thinking, and I might as well just lay it out here. You know, this is what I feel about the role of, in other words, self-esteem in not only individuation and self-actualization and the development of a person, but as an artist, as a creative, which ideally is someone who is using their own life and world experience and attitude towards their life to create something meaningful that other people might be able to resonate with, but ultimately it serves as a good expression, an honest, accurate expression that aligns with how they feel in the inside, you know? And I'm not going to have any better way to express myself than to understand myself. So that's why I listen to myself all the fucking time. And that's why I judge myself all the fucking time. And I've done this so much in my life that I've turned myself into a character that is my favorite person to listen to because they just happen to believe everything that I believe in. Does that make sense? All right. Well, peace. Thanks for letting me ramble. This is the first time I've ever like iterated this shit out loud, so I feel like I did a pretty good job, even though I'm sick as fuck. Just ran out of water. What are you gonna do, you know? Woe is me. I guess I'm just a narcissist at the end of the day, anyways.